Greensboro, North Carolina, summer of 2010. I was working the buffet line at Golden Corral on High Point Road. Hair in two French braids, name tag always sliding sideways. Trying to save for a used Honda so I could stop catching the city bus to Southwest High every single morning. Tell me in the comments where you watching from right now. Memphis, Houston, Atlanta, Chicago, London, Lagos, wherever you are, because this one gon' ripple through generations. Let's go back, all the way back to when I was 15 years old and thought love was supposed to feel like falling off a cliff. He walked in on a Wednesday evening with his older brother, 27 years old, tall like God took his time creating him, skin the color of brown sugar, Caesar cut with waves so deep you could get lost in them, and eyes that looked at me like I was the only girl in the whole loud, crowded restaurant. His name was Marcus Elijah Thompson, but everybody called him Mark. Mark worked construction, wore Timbs in the middle of summer, drove a black Charger with red racing stripes that rumbled when he pulled up, and when he smiled at me across the macaroni and cheese pan, my 15-year-old heart forgot every single thing my mama ever taught me. Y'all feel that little flutter just now? That's how it started, sweet and dangerous, all at once. Tell me quick in the comments if somebody ever looked at you and the whole world stopped spinning. I'm reading every single one, baby. He started coming every Wednesday and Friday, always sat in my section, always left a $20 bill on a $13 ticket, always asked, "How was your day, beautiful?" like my answer actually mattered to him. By the fourth week, he was waiting outside when my shift ended at 10, leaning against that Charger with one white rose he said he picked from his mama's garden just for me. I knew he was grown. I knew I was just a child. But when you're 15 and your mama working double shifts at the hospital and your daddy been gone since you were 3 and your grandma too sick to really watch you, sometimes a man with kind eyes and a deep voice telling you you're special feels like finding water in the desert when you didn't even know you was thirsty. Mama warned me. Every Sunday after church, she'd pull me into the kitchen while the collard greens was cooking down and say, "Jasmine Nicole, that man too old for you. He see a baby and think he found somebody he can mold and control." I'd suck my teeth, say, "Mama, you don't even know him," and sneak out my bedroom window anyway when she fell asleep, because Mark made me feel important. He'd pick me up after cheer practice, take me to cookout at midnight for milkshakes and fries, let me control his playlist, Beyonce, Alicia Keys, Mary J. Blige, and sing every word like they was written just for us. He told me I was his queen, his future wife, his whole world. He said age was just a number, that when I turned 18, we'd get married and nobody could say nothing about it. I believed every single word because I wanted to be chosen that desperately. Drop a broken heart if you remember being young and confusing attention with love. By December, I was pregnant. I found out 2 days before Christmas, peed on a dollar store test in the Golden Corral bathroom while the holiday rush was banging on the door asking for more dinner rolls. 16 years old, still wearing my cheer uniform on game days, still making honor roll, and carrying a baby by a man 11 years older than me who I thought was my soulmate. Mark cried when I told him, real tears rolling down them pretty brown cheeks, got down on one knee right there in the parking lot of the Dollar Tree on Randleman Road, and proposed with a ring he bought from Mr. Johnson's pawn shop on Spring Garden Street. I said no. Not because I didn't love him with every broken piece of my little teenage heart, but because something deep down in my spirit, maybe God, maybe my ancestors, maybe just a part of me that still wanted to be a girl instead of somebody's wife and mama, said if I married him at 16 to fix what was already broken, I would disappear completely and never find myself again. Mark didn't take it well. He started drinking heavy, disappearing for 3 and 4 days at a time, calling me at 2 a.m. crying about how I was destroying our family, how he couldn't live without us and the baby, how he was killing him. His depression got darker than a country road with no street lights. I begged him to get help, printed out phone numbers for free clinics from the library computer, offered to go with him, but he said real men handled their own demons and pushed me away harder every time I reached for him. Comment 2010 if you remember that year and what the world felt like back then. February 14th, 2012, Valentine's Day. I was 9 months pregnant, waddling around Southwest High with a belly I couldn't hide and shame I couldn't shake. Mark called me during lunch period, crying so hard I could barely understand what he was saying. He kept repeating he was sorry, that he loved me more than breathing, that he couldn't do this life without us, that the darkness was swallowing him whole and he couldn't fight it no more. Then the phone went silent. They found him that night in his black Charger behind the abandoned Kmart on Randleman Road, engine still running, radio still playing. He had shot himself in the head. I went into labor at 4 a.m. the next morning. Elijah Marcus Carter, my son, was born February 17th, 2012 at Moses Cone Hospital, 6 pounds, 3 ounces, with his daddy's hazel eyes and his daddy's waves and a cry that sounded like every single promise Mark never got to keep. The lie started the exact minute the social worker asked me who the father was for the birth certificate. I panicked hard. If I put Mark's name, they would do the math and see he was 27 when I was 15, maybe call Child Protective Services, maybe take my baby from me, maybe drag my family through an investigation that would shatter my mama's heart into pieces she couldn't glue back together. So I wrote Father Unknown in shaky handwriting and started building the wall brick by brick that would stand tall and heavy for 13 long years. I told Mama and Grandma that Daddy was some boy from school named Devin who denied the baby and moved to Atlanta with his family. They were disappointed, Lord knows they were, but they wrapped their arms around me tight and said, "We gonna make it through this, baby. We always do. This family don't break, we bend." I finished high school online, taking classes on that chunky laptop from the library while my baby slept in a bassinet next to my desk. Got my diploma in May 2013, walked across that stage at the Greensboro Coliseum with Elijah on my hip, 17 years old and already somebody's whole world. I got a job at Little Blessings Daycare on Phillips Avenue, making $9 an hour, moved into my own little apartment off Lee Street when Elijah turned 2, and raised my son on love and lies and prayers that got longer and more desperate every single night. Every milestone, I added another brick. First steps at 10 months old, lie. First word, mama, thank you, Jesus, lie. First day at pre-K at Peck Elementary, lie. Every Father's Day when he asked why he didn't have a daddy like the other kids at the park, lie after lie after lie. Tell me in the comments if you ever told a lie so many times you started believing it yourself. I kept Mark's pictures hidden in a Nike shoebox under my bed. Pictures of him smiling in his work gear, holding up fish he caught at Lake Brant, wearing that red polo hoodie I used to steal and sleep in until it stopped smelling like him. Some nights after Elijah fell asleep, I would pull out that box and cry so quiet even the walls couldn't hear me, tracing Mark's face with my finger like I could resurrect him if I just remembered him hard enough. His obituary from the Greensboro News and Record folded into a tiny square. The program from his funeral that I never attended because I was in the hospital having his baby. The letter he wrote me the night before he died that I've been too scared to read all the way through even now. All of it hidden, all of it secret, all of it eating me alive from the inside out. Elijah grew up looking more like his daddy every single day that passed. Same hazel eyes that turned almost gold in the sunlight, same deep dimple in his left cheek, same way of tilting his head to the side when he was thinking something through. People would stop me at the grocery store on Battleground Avenue and say, "Girl, where that baby get them pretty eyes from? Not from you?" I'd laugh it off, say his daddy, and change the subject before they could ask more questions. But Elijah started asking questions that cut me deeper than any knife could. At 5 years old, Mama, how come we don't got a daddy at the donuts with dad breakfast? At 7, did my daddy love me before he went to heaven? At 9, Mama, everybody else got a daddy story they tell. What's mine? Every single time, I added another brick and told another version of the same soft lie. Baby, your daddy loved you so much, but he got real sick in his mind and went to heaven before you were born. He watching over you now, I promise. It was the truth wrapped in the gentlest lie I could create. But children grow toward truth like plants grow toward sunlight. And by the time Elijah was 11 years old, he was asking questions I couldn't answer with half-truths and redirections anymore. Mama, how come we don't have any pictures of my daddy? How come Grandma get all quiet and weird when I bring him up? How come nobody in the family ever says his name out loud? I would feel my chest tighten like somebody was standing on it and change the subject lightning fast. You want some ice cream, baby? Let's go to Brewster's. But he was getting older, getting smarter, getting less easy to distract with treats and promises. The lie was eating me alive from the inside out like cancer nobody could see on an x-ray. I started having nightmares where Mark was standing at the foot of my bed, not angry anymore, just profoundly sad, asking me over and over, why you erasing me? Why you acting like I never existed? Why you keeping my son from knowing where he come from? I'd wake up at 3:17 a.m., same time every night, drenched in sweat, heart racing, feeling like I was drowning in guilt so thick I couldn't breathe through it. Started having panic attacks at work, in the grocery store. Driving down Wendover Avenue, suddenly couldn't catch my breath, chest tight, room spinning, convinced I was dying right there in front of everybody. My friend Tasha from church, the one who knew some of the story, but definitely not all of it, grabbed me after service one Sunday in August and said, Jazz, whatever you running from is about to catch you. You better turn around and face it head on before it tackles you from behind. I knew she was speaking truth. I knew the time was coming, but I kept thinking, just one more year. Just let him get a little older, a little stronger, a little more ready to handle it. Except babies don't wait for you to be ready. They grow up on God's schedule, not yours. I started going to free therapy at the YMCA on West Market Street. Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., sitting in a circle with 6 other women who carried secrets that weighed more than mountains. There was Miss Dorothy, who never told her adult children their father died in prison, serving life for murder. There was Shanice, who made a lie about where her daughter's father was, when really he was right there in town but just didn't want to be involved. There was Monica, who made up an entire fake husband and told her twins he was deployed overseas when he literally never existed at all. And there was me, Jasmine Nicole Carter, who erased the father of her child from existence because she was terrified a dead man's truth would somehow take away the living child she loved more than her own heartbeat. The therapist, Dr. Michelle Harper, beautiful dark-skinned sister with locks down to her waist and eyes that had seen absolutely everything twice, looked directly at me during my 4th session and said something that shattered every defense I had built. Jasmine, you keep saying you lied to protect Elijah, but who were you really protecting? Him or yourself? I sat there in that uncomfortable folding chair, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry bees overhead, and felt the truth crack me wide open like a raw egg hitting concrete. I was protecting myself from judgment, from shame, from questions I didn't have answers to, from having to explain out loud that I was 15 and he was 27, and maybe it was love, but maybe it was something else entirely, and I still don't know, and it hurts too much to figure it out. I was protecting myself from having to say the words out loud. Marcus killed himself. And maybe if I had said yes to that pawn shop ring, maybe if I loved him better or differently or more, maybe if I had seen how dark it was getting inside his head, he would still be breathing and Elijah would have his daddy. That guilt was a monster living in my chest, feeding on my silence, growing bigger every year I didn't speak its name. I sobbed so hard in that therapy circle that Dr. Harper had to hold me while the other women gathered around and prayed over me in English, in Spanish, in Haitian Creole, in Holy Ghost tongues I couldn't understand but felt in my bones until I could finally breathe normal again. That's when Dr. Harper said the 7 words that changed the entire direction of my life. The truth will cost you something, Jasmine, but lies cost you absolutely everything. And they cost your son his own story, his own history, his own right to know where he comes from. Y'all feel that blade twist deep? Come in everything if you know that pain intimately. After that session, I sat in my car in the YWCA parking lot for 2 hours, engine off, just staring at nothing, knowing she was right, but still too scared to do what needed doing. I drove to Maplewood Cemetery on the way home. Hadn't been there since the month after Elisha was born, when I was still bleeding and broken and barely holding myself together. Mark's grave was in the back section under a big oak tree, headstone simple and plain. Marcus Elijah Thompson, 1983-2012. Gone too soon, but never forgotten. I sat down right there in the grass in my work scrubs, not even caring that it was damp from the sprinklers, and finally talked to him for real. "Mark," I whispered, "I'm so tired, baby. I'm so tired of lying. I'm so tired of pretending you never existed. I'm so tired of watching our son grow up looking just like you and not being able to tell him that. He asking questions I can't keep dodging. He deserved to know where he come from. He deserved to know you loved him even though you couldn't stay." The wind picked up right then and shaking the leaves on that oak tree, and I swear on my life, I felt Mark say, "Then tell him. Tell him the truth. All of it. He's stronger than you think. Y'all both are." I cried until the sun started going down and the cemetery workers started giving me concerned looks from across the lawn. By the time Elijah turned 12 years old in February 2024, he wasn't a baby anymore. He was smart, on a roll at Northeast Middle School, reading 5 grades ahead, asking questions that required real answers instead of the fairy tales I've been feeding him his whole life. "Mama, if my daddy died before I was born, how come you never talk about him? People talk about dead people all the time. They tell stories at Thanksgiving and put pictures on the mantle and say, 'He would have loved to see you.' But you don't never do that. Why?" "Mama, I looked at my birth certificate when you wasn't home. It say father unknown right there in black and white. How you not know who my daddy is? That don't make no sense. How come when I ask my grandma about my daddy, she get all stiff and change the subject real quick? What is everybody hiding from me?" Every question was a nail hammered into the coffin where I had buried the truth 13 years ago. I tried to hold on tighter to the lie, but Elijah was growing toward the truth like kudzu climbs a telephone pole. Slow at first, then all at once. Impossible to stop. The summer before 7th grade, something fundamental shifted in him. He stopped asking direct questions and started getting real quiet instead. Started spending more time alone in his room with the door closed and music playing low through his headphones. Started looking at me sideways, not with anger exactly, but with something worse. Disappointment. Like he knew deep down I was lying and was just waiting patiently for me to grow enough backbone to tell him the truth. I remember one evening in late August, heat so thick you could swim through it. Both of us sitting on our little apartment porch eating popsicles and trying to catch any breeze that might pass by. When Elijah said, without even looking at me, "Mama, I know you lying about something big. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I know it in my spirit. And when I finally find out the truth, I'm going to be real hurt that you ain't just told me from the beginning." My popsicle melted all over my hand and dripped on the concrete while I sat there completely frozen, trying desperately to figure out what words could possibly come out of my mouth. I opened and closed my mouth 3 times like a fish drowning in air before I finally managed to, "Baby, sometimes grown folks have reasons for the things they do that's complicated." He turned and looked directly at me with those hazel eyes, Mark's eyes, the eyes that haunt my dreams and my waking hours, and said with more wisdom than any 12-year-old should possess, "That's what people say when they don't actually have a good reason altogether. That's what people say when they just scared." Then he got up, went inside the apartment, and I sat on that porch until after midnight, crying so quiet the neighbors in the next unit wouldn't hear, knowing my baby was absolutely right and I was absolutely wrong, and time was running out faster than water through my fingers. I started having full-blown panic attacks after that. At work while I was braiding a client's hair at the salon where I work now, at Food Line on Spring Garden Street reaching for cereal, sitting at red lights on Wendover Avenue, suddenly couldn't breathe, chest caving in, world spinning sideways, absolutely convinced I was having a heart attack and dying right there in public. Had to pull over 3 times driving home from work one Thursday, hands shaking so bad I couldn't grip the steering wheel, hyperventilating into a paper bag I kept in my glove compartment for exactly this purpose. My girl Keisha from the salon, who knew more of the story than most but still not everything, grabbed me by both shoulders one day after I had a panic attack in the break room and said, "Jasmine Nicole, listen to me good. Whatever demon you running from is gaining on you, baby. You can either turn around right now and fight it on your terms, or you can wait until it tackles you from behind and you got no control over how the fight go down. Which one you gonna choose?" I knew she was speaking prophetic truth. I knew the reckoning was coming, but I kept bargaining with God and time. Just 6 more months. Just let him finish 7th grade. Just let him get through middle school. Just 1 more year of childhood before I break his heart with the truth. But the universe has a way of forcing your hand when you've been stalling too long, and my hand got forced on September 10th, 2024. September 10th, 2024. A Tuesday that felt like the sky was pressing down on my head. Elijah came home from his 2nd week of 7th grade at Northeast Middle School carrying his backpack and a manila folder that might as well have been a ticking bomb. He dropped his backpack by the door like always, went straight to the refrigerator for juice like always, grabbed the last of the Oreos from the cabinet, then sat down heavy at our little kitchen table and said, "Mama, we got assigned a major project today, and I need your help with it." I was stirring spaghetti sauce, exhausted from doing hair all day at the salon, my feet hurting, my back aching, already mentally planning what I needed to do before bed, when he slid that manila folder across the table and opened it slow. Inside was a blank family tree worksheet, the kind with big circles and connecting lines, spaces for names and dates and stories, instructions printed at the top in bold letters. Interview your family members and complete as much of your family tree as possible. Be prepared to present your family's history to the class. Due October 15th, worth 25% of your grade. The wooden spoon fell out of my hand into the bubbling sauce, and I didn't even notice. Time completely stopped. The kitchen got so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears like drums at a funeral. Elijah was staring up at me with those hazel eyes, Marcus's eyes that I see every single day and pretend I don't, waiting for me to say something helpful and normal and motherly, and all I could see was that enormous blank circle on the page where his father's name was supposed to be written. 13 years of lies staring me directly in my face on a piece of paper from Northeast Middle School's 7th grade social studies class. Can y'all feel that moment when everything you've been running from finally corners you and there ain't no escape route left? "Mama?" Elijah's voice got smaller, more careful, like he was walking on ice that might crack any second. I turned off the stove with trembling hands, wiped my palms on my jeans even though they wasn't wet, and sat down slow across from him at that little thrift store table we'd eaten 1,000 meals at. My hands were shaking so violently I had to tuck them under my thighs to hide them. "Baby," I started, and my voice cracked like old glass being stepped on. "I can't help you with this project the way you want me to." His whole face fell like a building collapsing. "Why not, Mama? Everybody else getting help from their parents. Mrs. Patterson said this is supposed to be a family project." "Because," I said, and felt hot tears already starting to burn behind my eyes, "because I've been keeping something from you since the day you was born, and it's finally time I stop." The look on his face almost broke me right there. Confusion mixed with fear, mixed with something that looked like relief, like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life without even knowing it. Tell me in the comments if you ever had to look your child dead in their eyes and admit you've been lying to them since they took their first breath. Drop a prayer hand if you need strength just reading these words. "Mama, you scaring me for real right now." I know, baby, and I'm sorry. I'm scared too. But you 12 years old now, and you smart, and you brave, and you deserve the complete truth, even if it hurt, especially if it hurt. I stood up on legs that felt like water, walked to my bedroom like I was walking to my own execution, and pulled that Nike shoebox out from under my bed where it had lived in darkness for 13 years. Dust thick on the lid, corners held together with yellow tape, Marcus's entire existence crammed inside a box meant for sneakers. When I came back to the kitchen, Elijah was sitting up straighter, something in his face that looked way older than 12, like he knew whatever was in that box was about to fundamentally change his understanding of everything. I sat down, placed the box carefully on the table between us like it might explode if I moved too fast, and said with my voice shaking like leaves in a hurricane, "Your daddy's name was Marcus Elijah Thompson. Everybody who loved him called him Mark. And I need to tell you the complete and honest truth about him, about me, about us, and about why I lied to you for your whole entire life." Then I opened that box. Slow. Like opening a casket at a funeral, like releasing something that'd been trapped for too long. The first thing I pulled out was the photograph of Marcus in his construction gear, dirty jeans, work boots, neon safety vest, hard cap tilted back on his head, that smile that used to make my 15-year-old heart forget how to beat regular. Elijah stared at that picture like he was looking into a mirror that showed him the future and the past at the exact same time. His voice came out in a whisper, "That's my daddy?" "That's your daddy, baby." "Mama." His hand reached out slow and touched the edge of the photograph like it might disappear if he grabbed too hard. "Mama, why he look exactly like me, or why I look exactly like him?" "Because you his son, baby. You got his eyes that turn gold in the sunshine. You got his dimples. You got his smile. You even tilt your head the same exact way when you thinking deep about something important." Tears were already streaming down both of our faces, but neither of us moved to wipe them away. I pulled out more pictures, laying them across the kitchen table like tarot cards, revealing a future that already happened. Marcus at Lake Brant holding up a huge catfish and grinning, Marcus leaning against his black Charger with the red racing stripes, Marcus in that red polo hoodie at a cookout with his arm around his brother. Then I pulled out the hardest one to look at, me at 16 years old, belly swollen and round, Marcus's arm wrapped around my shoulders, both of us trying to smile for whoever was taking the picture, even though you could see the fear and confusion and desperate hope in our eyes. "Mama," Elijah breathed out, staring at that picture like it held secrets to the universe. "You was just a baby yourself." "I was 15 when I met your daddy, baby. 16 when I got pregnant, 17 when I had you." The silence that filled the kitchen after those words was so heavy, it had physical weight. "How old was he?" Elijah asked quietly. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading for 13 years, the truth I'd been hiding under lies and misdirection and careful subject changes. He was 27, baby. Elijah's eyes went wide, did the math quick in his head. "Mama, that's—" "I know what it is, baby. I know." Y'all still with me? I need you to squeeze my hand right now because we about to walk through the valley where shadows got shadows. The lie was eating me alive from the inside out, consuming me piece by piece like cancer nobody could see. I started waking up at 2:47 a.m., same time every single night, feeling Marcus sitting on the foot of my bed, not angry no more, just sad, his eyes asking me one question over and over: why you erasing me from my own child? Some nights, I'd sit straight up in bed, heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst through my chest, and I could smell his cologne, that polo blue he used to wear, so strong I'd look around the dark room expecting to see him standing in the corner. The guilt was crushing me. Every time Elijah asked about his father, every time he drew a picture at school with just me and him, every time Father's Day rolled around and he pretended he didn't care while I watched his little heart break. Another brick of shame got added to the wall I was carrying on my back. I started going to therapy at the YWCA on Bennett Street.
Tuesday nights at 6:30, sitting in a circle with 8 other women who carried secrets heavier than mountains. There was Miss Patricia, who never told her grown children their daddy died in prison. There was Keisha, who lied about where her daughter's father was when he was actually in her life but just didn't want to be a daddy. There was Angela, who made up a whole fake husband and told her son he was overseas when he never existed at all. And there was me, Jasmine Nicole Carter, who erased the father of her child because she was scared a dead man's truth would take away the living child she loved more than breathing. The therapist, Dr. Michelle Harper, beautiful black woman with locks down her back and eyes that seen everything twice, looked at me during my 3rd session and said something that shattered me. Jasmine, you keep saying you lied to protect Elijah, but who were you really protecting? Him or yourself? I sat there in that folding chair with the scratchy fabric, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt the truth crack me open like an egg. I was protecting myself. From judgment, from questions, from having to explain that I was 16 and he was 27 and I thought it was love, but maybe it was something else and I don't know, and it hurts too much to figure it out. I was protecting myself from having to say out loud that Marcus killed himself. And maybe if I had said yes to that ring, maybe if I had loved him better, maybe if I had seen how dark it was getting, he would still be here. I sobbed so hard that night that Dr. Harper had to hold me while the other women in the circle prayed over me in languages I didn't even know, English and Spanish and Igbo and tongues, until I could breathe again. That's when Dr. Harper said the words that changed everything. The truth will cost you something, baby, but lies cost you everything, and they cost your son his own story. Y'all feel that knife twist? Comment truth if you know that pain. By the time Elijah turned 11, he wasn't a baby no more. He was smart, on a roll at Kaiser Middle School, reading 3 grades ahead, asking questions that required real answers instead of the fairy tales I've been feeding him. Mama, how my daddy die if nobody ever talk about him? People talk about dead people. They tell stories. We don't got no stories. Mama, why his name not on my birth certificate? I looked when you wasn't home. It say father unknown. How you not know who my daddy is? Mama, why grandma get all quiet and change the subject every time I mention him? What's she hiding? Each question was a nail in the coffin of my lie. I tried to hold on tighter, but Elijah was growing into the truth like ivy climbs a wall, slow, steady, and impossible to stop. The summer he turned 12, something shifted in him. He stopped asking questions and started getting quiet, started spending more time in his room, door closed, music playing low, started looking at me different, not with anger, but with something worse, disappointment, like he knew I was lying and was just waiting for me to come clean. I remember one night in July, hot as fish grease, both of us sitting on the porch eating popsicles trying to catch a breeze, and Elijah said without looking at me, Mama, I know you lying about something. I don't know what it is yet, but I know, and when I find out, I'm gonna be mad you ain't just tell me the truth from the start. My popsicle melted all over my hand while I sat there frozen, trying to figure out what to say. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out except, baby, sometimes grown folks got reasons for the things they do. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and said, that's what people say when they don't got no good reason at all. Then he went inside, and I sat on that porch till midnight, crying so quiet the neighbors wouldn't hear, knowing my son was right and I was wrong, and time was running out. Comment 12 if you remember being 12 years old and figuring out your parents was human. I started having panic attacks. At work, at home, at the grocery store on Battleground Avenue, I'd be reaching for cereal and suddenly couldn't breathe, chest tight, room spinning, feeling like I was dying right there in aisle 7 between the Frosted Flakes and the Lucky Charms. My friend Tanya from church, the one who knew some of the story but not all of it, grabbed me one Sunday after service and said, Jazz, whatever you running from is catching up. You better turn around and face it before it tackles you. I knew she was right. I knew the time was coming, but I kept thinking, just one more year. Just let them get a little older, a little stronger, a little more ready. Except babies don't wait for us to be ready. They grow up on God's schedule, not ours. The universe has a way of forcing your hand when you've been stalling too long, and for me, that moment came on September 10th, 2024, a Tuesday afternoon that felt like the end of the world. Eliza came home from his second week of 7th grade at Kaiser Middle School carrying a folder. He dropped his backpack by the door like always, went to the fridge for Deuce like always, then sat down at the kitchen table and said, "Mama, we got a project due next month and I need your help." I was stirring spaghetti sauce, tired from my shift at the salon, already thinking about what I needed to do before bed, when he slid that folder across the table and opened it. Inside was a blank family tree worksheet. Big circles and lines connecting parents to grandparents to great-grandparents, spaces for names and birth dates and stories, instructions at the top that said, "Interview your family members and fill in as much as you can. Be prepared to share your family's history with the class." My wooden spoon fell into the sauce and I didn't even notice. Time stopped. The kitchen got real quiet except for the bubbling pot on the stove. Elijah was looking at me with them hazel eyes, Marcus's eyes, waiting for me to say something, and all I could see was that blank circle where his daddy's supposed to be. 12 years of lies staring me in the face on a piece of paper from Northeast Middle School. Can y'all feel that moment when everything you've been running from finally catches you and ain't nowhere left to hide?
I stood there at that stove with spaghetti sauce burning, staring at that family tree like it was a death sentence. Elijah was waiting for an answer, but my tongue was stuck to the roof of my mouth like I'd been eating paste. "Mama," his voice was small now, careful, like he knew he was walking on ice that might crack. "You okay?" I turned off the stove, wiped my hands on my jeans, and sat down across from him at that little kitchen table we got from Goodwill on Randleman Road. My hands were shaking so bad I had to fold them in my lap. "Baby," I started, and my voice cracked like old glass. "I can't help you with this project the way you want me to." His face fell. "Why not? Everybody else got help from their mama." "Because," I said, and felt tears starting already. "Because I've been keeping something from you, and it's time I stop. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to look your child in the eyes and admit you've been lying to them their whole life? Drop a prayer if you need strength just reading this." Elijah's eyes got wide. "Mama, you scaring me." "I know, baby, I'm scared too, but you 12 years old now, and you smart, and you deserve the truth even if it hurts, especially if it hurts." I got up, went to my bedroom, and pulled that shoebox from under my bed where it had lived for 12 years. Dust on the lid, tape holding the corners together, Marcus's whole life inside, pictures, letters, the obituary from the Greensboro News and Record, the program from his funeral that I kept but never attended. When I came back to the kitchen, Elijah was sitting up straighter, something in his face that looked older than 12, like he knew whatever was in that box was going to change everything. I sat down, put the box between us, and said, "Your daddy's name was Marcus Elijah Thompson. Everybody called him Mark. And I need to tell you the whole truth about him, about me, and about why I lied." Then I opened that box. First thing I pulled out was the picture of Marcus in his construction gear, hard hat tilted back, smile so bright it still hurt to look at. Elijah stared at it like he was seeing his own face in a mirror. "That's my daddy?" His voice was barely a whisper. "That's your daddy, baby." "Why, he looked just like me." "Because he's your son. You got his eyes, his dimples, his smile. You even tilt your head the same way when you thinking deep." Elijah reached for the picture with hands that were shaking just like mine. I pulled out more pictures. Marcus at Lake Brant with that huge catfish, Marcus in his black Charger with the red racing stripes, Marcus in the red hoodie I used to steal and wear until it smelled like me instead of him. Then I pulled out the hardest one, me at 16, belly round and swollen, Marcus's arm around me, both of us trying to smile for the camera, even though you could see the fear in our eyes. "Mama," Elijah said, staring at that picture, "you was a baby." "I was 16 when I met your daddy, baby. 17 when I had you. Drop a tear if you remember what 16 felt like, old enough to hurt, too young to know better." I told him everything.
Told him I was working at Golden Corral, trying to save for a car, still wearing my cheer uniform to school on game days. Told him Marcus was 27, grown, working construction, driving that loud Charger, looking at me like I was the only girl in the world. Told him about the roses, the late night drives to Cookout, the way Marcus made me feel seen when I was invisible everywhere else. Told him about the pregnancy test in the Golden Corral bathroom, the ring from the pawn shop, the proposal I said no to because something in my spirit knew I would disappear as I said yes. Told him about Marcus's depression getting darker than midnight in a coal mine, about the phone calls at 3 a.m., about how I begged him to get help, but he said real men handle their own. Then I told him about Valentine's Day 2012, about the phone call during lunch, Marcus crying so hard I couldn't understand the words, saying he was sorry, that he loved me, that he couldn't do this without us, about the line going quiet, about them finding him that night in his Charger behind the abandoned Kmart, about he shot himself because the darkness won. Elijah was crying now, tears streaming down his face, but he didn't look away from me. He killed himself? His voice broke on every word. Yes, baby. And you went into labor the next morning. You was born 2 days after your daddy died, February 17, 2012, 6 pounds, 3 ounces, with his eyes and his waves and a cry that sounded like every promise he never got to keep. Comment February if you feeling this weight right now like I am doing. I told him about writing Father Unknown on the birth certificate because I was scared. Scared they see Marcus was 27 and I was 17. Scared they call DSS and take my baby. Scared they drag my family through mud we couldn't wash off. I told him about the lie I built, brick by brick, the story about some boy from school who moved to Atlanta, the way I changed the subject every time he asked questions, the 12 years of Father's Days and birthdays and milestones where I let him think his daddy just didn't care. I'm sorry, baby, I said, crying so hard I could barely get the words out. I'm so sorry. Your daddy loved you before he ever saw you. That's why I hurt him so bad. He wanted to be here for you, but the pain was too big and he didn't know how to carry it. Elijah was staring at all the pictures spread out on the table, touching each one like he was trying to reach through time and grab hold of something that was already gone. Why you ain't just tell me the truth from the start? His voice wasn't angry, just broken. Because I was scared, baby. Scared you'd hate me. Scared you'd ask questions I didn't know how to answer. Scared people would judge us. Scared 1,000 things that seemed so big back then but don't matter at all compared to you knowing the truth about where you come from. We sat there at that table for 2 hours while the spaghetti sauce got cold and the sun went down outside. Elijah asked questions, hard ones, brave ones, smart ones that cut me to the bone. Did he want me? Yes, baby. He loved you so much it scared him. Do you think he would have been a good daddy? I think he would have tried his best, and his best would have been real good. Did he leave me anything? He left you a letter. I've been keeping it for when you was ready. I pulled out the envelope. Marcus's handwriting on the front, sealed with tape that had yellowed over 12 years. Elijah held it like it was made of glass. Can I read it now? You can do whatever you need to, baby.
Elijah opened that letter slow, like he was afraid if he moved too fast, it might disappear. His hands were trembling so bad the paper was shaking, and I wanted to reach out and hold them steady, but I knew this was something he needed to do by himself. The letter was written on notebook paper, the edges torn rough where Marcus ripped it from a spiral. His handwriting, big and messy, some words pressed so hard the pen tore through, some so light you could barely read them. Elijah cleared his throat and started reading out loud, voice breaking every few words. To my son, if you reading this, I didn't make it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to be there for your first steps and your first words and your first day of school. I wanted to teach you how to fish at Lake Brand and how to change a tire and how to treat women better than I treated your mama. I loved your mama more than I knew how to show her. She was 16 and I was grown and I knew better, but I loved her anyway, and that's on me.
She tried to save me, but I was already drowning, and I ain't know how to swim. I loved you before I ever saw you. When your mama told me about you, I cried like a baby because I knew I was going to be somebody's daddy, and that's the most important job a man can have. I got the ring from Mr. Johnson's pawn shop on Spring Garden. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. When she said no, I understood. She was smarter than me. She knew I was sinking. The darkness inside me ain't got nothing to do with you or your mama. It's something I've been carrying since I was young, something that runs in my family, something I should have got help for, but I was too proud and too scared and too stupid. Be better than me, son. When the darkness come for you, and it might because it runs in blood sometimes, don't try to handle it alone. Get help. Talk to somebody. Let people love you even when you feel unlovable. Take care of your mama. She the strongest woman I ever knew. She loved me even when I didn't deserve it. She tried to save me even though I was already gone. Don't be mad at her for whatever she did or didn't tell you. She did the best she could with a broken situation. You got my eyes and my waves, but I hope you got her heart. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. Daddy. By the time Elijah finished reading, we were both sobbing so hard the walls were shaking. He folded that letter real careful, put it back in the envelope, and held it against his chest like he was trying to absorb his daddy's love through the paper. He said, "Mama, he loved me." "Yes, baby. He loved you so much. But he left anyway. Because the pain was bigger than the love, baby. Not because the love wasn't strong enough, but because the pain was too heavy to carry. And that ain't your fault or my fault. That's the sickness that took him." Elijah looked at me with those hazel eyes, Marcus's eyes, and asked the question I'd been dreading for 12 years. "Do you think I'ma be like him? Do you think the darkness gonna come for me too?" Y'all, my heart shattered into a million pieces right there at that kitchen table. I grabbed both his hands, pulled him close, looked him dead in his eyes and said, "Baby, listen to me. You got your daddy's eyes and his smile and his waves, but you also got my strength and my stubbornness and my refusal to quit. If the darkness ever come knocking, you don't have to fight it alone. We gonna get you help. We gonna talk about it. We gonna love you through it. You hear me?" He nodded, tears still falling. "Your daddy wrote in that letter to get help if you need it. That's the gift he giving you. Permission to be different than him. Permission to choose life, even when it's hard." We sat there holding each other until the street lights came on outside and the apartment got dark around us. Finally, Elijah pulled back and said, "Mama, who else know?" My stomach dropped. "What you mean, baby? Does Grandma know? Does Grandpa, Auntie Keisha, Uncle Troy?" I shook my head. "No, baby. They think your daddy was some boy from school who moved away. They don't know about Marcus." The look on his face broke me all over again. "So you lied to everybody?" "Yes. For 12 years?" "Yes." "Mama." He stood up from the table, started pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "Mama, you gotta tell them. You can't keep lying. I can't keep lying." "I know, baby. No, Mama." He stopped, turned to face me, and in that moment he looked 30 years old instead of 12. "Mama, you gotta tell Grandma and Grandpa. They deserve to know. I deserve to have a family that knows who my daddy really was." He was right. Of course he was right. Comment truth if you know that moment when your child becomes your teacher. "Okay," I said, voice shaking. "Okay, baby. I'll tell them. This Sunday after church. You promise?" "I promise." That night after Elijah went to bed, I sat on the floor of my bedroom with that shoebox, all them pictures spread around me like pieces of a puzzle I've been trying to hide for 12 years. I picked up the picture of Marcus in that red hoodie, the one where he's smiling at something off camera, probably something I said that made him laugh, And for the first time in 12 years, I didn't cry. I just talked to him. "Mark," I whispered to that picture, "I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell Mama and Daddy the truth about us, about you, about everything. I'm scared as hell, but Elijah right. We can't keep living in this lie. Your son know who you are now, and it's time everybody else know too." I swear on everything, I felt him smile, felt him say, "Finally." The next few days were the longest of my life. I called Mama on Wednesday and asked if her and Daddy could come over Sunday after church for dinner. "Of course, baby," she said. "You want me to bring anything?" "No, ma'am. I got it. I just need to talk to y'all about something important." There was a pause. "Everything okay, Jazz?" "It will be, Mama. It will be." Sunday morning, I got up at 5 a.m. and started cooking. Fried chicken, Marcus's favorite, the way his mama used to make it with extra cayenne. Macaroni and cheese with 3 kinds of cheese and breadcrumbs on top. Collard greens with smoked turkey neck because Daddy don't eat pork no more. Hot water cornbread that sizzled when it hit the grease. Sweet potato pie with the lattice crust Marcus taught me how to make that summer. Cooking was the only way I knew how to say I'm sorry without words.
Sunday afternoon, 2:15 p.m., my little apartment smelling like heaven and my heart beating like a drum at a funeral. Mom and Daddy walked in carrying hugs and questions. "Why you cook all this food, girl? What's the special occasion? You ain't getting married on us, is you?" I tried to smile, but my face wouldn't cooperate. Elijah was sitting on the couch wearing his church clothes, that shoebox on his lap, looking at me like, "You better not back out now, Mama." We ate first. Had to, because you can't have hard conversations on empty stomachs, and I needed my hands busy so they wouldn't shake so bad. Daddy had 3 pieces of chicken and 2 helpings of macaroni. Mama kept looking at me sideways, knowing something was coming, but not knowing what. After we finished eating and cleared the table, I made everybody sit in the living room. Daddy on the big chair, Mama on the love seat, Elijah next to me on the couch with that shoebox between us like a bomb about to explode. "Mama, Daddy," I started, and my voice cracked already. "I need to tell y'all something I should have told you 12 years ago. And it's gonna hurt, and you gonna be mad. But I need you to let me get through it before you say anything." Mama's hand went to her chest. "Lord Jesus, you sick?" "No, ma'am, but I've been lying to you since Elijah was born, and he know the truth now, and it's time y'all know too." I nodded to Elijah, and he opened that shoebox, slow, like opening a casket. He pulled out the first picture, Marcus in his construction gear, and held it up. Mama gasped so loud the windows shook. Daddy leaned forward, eyes squinting, then going wide as recognition hit him. "That's," Mama's voice was barely a whisper, "that's that boy. That's that boy you used to sneak out to see when you was in high school." "Yes, ma'am." Tears were already streaming down my face. His name was Marcus Elijah Thompson. Everybody called him Mark, and he's Elijah's father. The silence that followed was so loud, it had weight. Can y'all feel that moment when the truth finally comes out after years of hiding? Drop a crying emoji if you're right there with me. Daddy stood up, sat back down, stood up again. "Jazz, that man was 27. I know, Daddy. I was 17 when I had Elijah. I know." Mama started crying before I even said another word. "I know I should have told you from the beginning," I continued, voice shaking like leaves in a hurricane. "But I was scared. Scared DSS would take my baby. Scared of what people would say. Scared y'all would be ashamed of me. So I lied. I said it was some boy from school who moved away, and I've been carrying that lie for 12 years. I told them everything. About Golden Corral and the roses and the Charger with red racing stripes.
about the pregnancy test and the ring from the pawn shop and saying no because something in my spirit knew I would disappear. About Marcus's depression and the 3 a.m. phone calls and how he wouldn't get help because he thought real men handled their own. About Valentine's Day 2012 and the phone call and the silence. About finding out he shot himself in that abandoned Kmart parking lot. About going into labor the next morning and writing "Father Unknown" on the birth certificate. About 12 years of lying and hiding and carrying this weight by myself. When I finished, Mama was sobbing so hard her whole body was shaking. Daddy had his face in his hands. Elijah was staring at the floor, that letter from his daddy clutched in his hand. Finally, Daddy looked up at me with tears streaming down his face and said, "Baby girl, why you carry this by yourself all this time? That's what family for. Comment family if you know that kind of love." Mama got up off that love seat, came over to where I was sitting, and pulled me into her chest like I was 6 years old again. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry I lied to you." "Hush now," she said, rocking me back and forth. "Hush. You was a baby yourself, a scared baby trying to protect another baby. I'm sorry we wasn't there for you the way you needed." Daddy came over too, wrapped his big arms around all three of us, me, Mama, and Elijah, and we stood there in my little living room crying and holding each other while the sun moved across the floor and the afternoon turned to evening. When we finally pulled apart, Mama picked up that picture of Marcus, the one where he's smiling in his construction gear. She stared at it for a long time, running her finger across his face. "He looked just like Elijah," she whispered, "or Elijah looked just like him." "Yes, ma'am." "He was handsome." "Yes, ma'am." "He loved you." "Yes, ma'am, the only way he knew how." Mama nodded and folded that picture against her chest and said, "Then he part of this family too, even if he gone, and we gon' make sure Elijah know where he come from." Y'all, I broke down all over again. Daddy picked up Marcus's letter to Elijah and read it out loud in a voice thick with tears. When he got to the part about "be better than me" and "get help if the darkness come," Daddy's voice cracked so bad he had to stop. He folded that letter, put it in Elijah's hand and said, "Son, your daddy made some mistakes, but he loved you. He loved you enough to tell you the truth, even though he wasn't going to be here to see you grow up. That's your inheritance, his love and his warning. Don't waste it." Elijah nodded, couldn't speak, just held that letter like it was the most valuable thing in the world. The next Saturday, all four of us, me, Elijah, Mama, and Daddy, drove out to Maplewood Cemetery. We brought white roses because that's what Marcus used to bring me. We stood in front of that headstone, Marcus Elijah Thompson, 1984 to 2012, gone too soon, and finally said the things that should have been said 12 years ago. Daddy put his hand on the headstone and said, "Marcus, I don't know if you can hear me, but this is Elijah's granddaddy. I wish I could have met you. I wish I could have helped you when you was drowning. But I'm here now for your son, and I promise you I'ma make sure he know he loved, he's safe, and he ain't gotta carry nothing alone." Mama laid her roses on the grave and said, "Baby, I forgive you for what you couldn't help. Thank you for loving my daughter, even though y'all was both too young. Thank you for giving us Elijah. Rest easy now." Elijah knelt down, put his hand flat on the ground like he was trying to reach through the earth and touch his daddy and said, "Hi, Daddy, it's me. I look just like you. Mama showed me the pictures. I got your letter. I'ma be better than you like you asked, but I'ma remember you too. I promise." I couldn't speak, just stood there crying while my family surrounded me, holding me up when my legs wouldn't work no more. Drop a rose if you feeling this in your soul right now. That night, back at my apartment, Elijah taped Marcus's picture to his bedroom wall, right next to his bed where he could see it every morning and every night. "So I remember where I come from," he said. The healing didn't happen overnight. There were more tears, more conversations, more counseling sessions at the YMCA for all of us. Mama had to grieve the grandson's father she never got to know. Daddy had to face that he wasn't present enough when I was 16 to see I was slipping away. Elijah had to learn how to carry his father's memory without carrying his pain. And me? I had to forgive myself for lying, for being 16 and thinking I was grown, for loving a man who couldn't save himself, for spending 12 years hiding when I should have been healing. But the lie was gone, and in its place grew something stronger. Truth, messy and painful and beautiful and whole. Elijah started writing letters to his daddy and leaving them at the grave with drawings and report cards. He started looking in the mirror and saying, "I got my daddy's eyes, but I'ma have my mama's strength." And me? I stopped waking up at 2:47 a.m. feeling Marcus sitting on my bed. Now when I feel him, he's smiling because his son knows his name, because his story is being told with love instead of shame, because the truth finally set us all free. The truth gonna cost you something. It might cost you pride, comfort, the version of the story you've been telling yourself for years, but lies cost you everything. They cost you peace. They cost you connection. They cost you the chance to be fully known and fully loved. I love you, God loves you, and the truth loves you most of all. Until next time, stay free.